And then right after my signal cuts out with Shiloh, I watch as hundreds of collapse calls just cascade down the screen of this CAD in the cab of my truck. And the thought that immediately goes through my head is, I've just lost my wife.
Welcome to the Motivated Medic Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for today's episode. Hey, this is Tony and Dayna, Foul Zone. I've got the Confessions of a Medic's Wife here with me, and we are doing a really special interview. I've never done anything like this before, but we are actually interviewing a couple, and I'll allow them to do their introduction as far as who they are and what they do, and we're going to talk about some dynamics when it comes to being married and being in not just healthcare, but in pre-hospital environment, and then also the hospital environment, because both Michael and I have worked on that side of things in addition to on the ambulance. So this is Michael and Shiloh Bates. So welcome, guys.
Thanks, Tony.
Glad to be here.
And so why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll get right into it.
Okay. My name is Michael Bates. I am a paramedic in a high-volume 911 service in the Eastern Tennessee area. And my wife, Shiloh.
I am a registered nurse, and I work labor and delivery, and we usually have over 2,500 deliveries every year.
That's crazy to think about.
How long have you guys been married?
Almost 5 years.
Awesome.
Okay. And for the record, we hit our 14th in August.
Ooh.
Yes, but that's awesome. Now, you guys have any kids?
Just 2 fur babies, a German Shepherd named Shayla and a Black Lab mix named Bradford.
Awesome.
We love our fur babies.
Yeah, we've got a couple. I won't call them rugrats because, well, Mia, she's about the size of a rugrat, but Maverick's 70 pounds, so that's not exactly a rugrat.
I keep telling Anthony that if quarantine lasts any longer, that we're going to end up with a third fur baby.
So Michael working on as a medic on the truck, and Shiloh in the labor and delivery unit. So that has its own set of challenges. What now, Michael? I know the timetable kind of when you went through medic school and everything else, but what's the timetable between Shiloh you becoming an RN and that process, and then Michael with you as an EMT transitioning as a paramedic?
Sure.
I graduated with my BSN in 2010, and I worked 2 years on a medical oncology unit, and I have been about, I guess this fall will be about 7 years doing, started out postpartum and now labor and delivery at my current place.
Okay, awesome.
And then when we met in 2013, I was a volunteer firefighter and an emergency medical responder, also formerly known as medical first responder. So there was a little bit of that, healthcare similarity there in the fact that we had that thing in common. And then I began working on my EMT shortly after we got married, and then transitioned from EMT to paramedic approximately 2 years ago.
And that's when you and I met. We were both working in the ER.
Yes.
Yes. And we developed our friendship and relationship then. So a lot of good crazy times at the Level 1 Trauma Center.
Crazy is accurate.
Oh man, there's some aspects of it that I miss. There's others I do not. So, but good experience for both of us, I know. So
yes.
Okay, so as you guys have transitioned to where you are today in your careers, what kind of challenges have you faced just in and amidst the differing, I guess, scopes, if you will.
I think perhaps the biggest challenge that we faced was approximately a year after we got married. I transitioned from the emergency department to the truck. And when I did that, I had gone from working night shift, which Shiloh was still working night shift, to working 10-hour day shifts. And so there was the challenge of essentially hot bunking to the point where we we were struggling, and we had to be intentional about just spending time together because of the fact that our shifts were opposite. um, and then you throw in the challenges of, I immediately went from EMT to paramedic school, jumped straight into medic school from EMT. And the added stress of going through medic school while working a shift opposite my wife, um, and just trying to put the time and effort into our brand new marriage, um, while also advancing my career educationally. I think that was probably the biggest challenge that we've faced so far.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Working night shift is a challenge to anybody, but I had already done it for a few years already, and I was getting tired, and um, I had also gotten bumped. I was like the next person to go, and we got a new manager, and they said, no, it's a floor seniority, not hospital seniority. And I had 2 years hospital seniority, and I got bumped back 9 people about the same time that he moved to day shift. So, besides being disappointed,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think that was uh, a lot of it. And him being in school, he was doing distance learning, and he'd have to go do his
That's
clinicals
right.
in
Yeah, I remember that.
North Carolina, and he'd be gone for like 5 days or a week or so at a time, and then come back and have to work, and just needing the time to be able to see each other and spend time with each other and to build that relationship.
Yeah, Dana and I have a pretty similar experience because as I was going through medic school and working full time, which was it felt like 3 full-time jobs, quite frankly. And I know Michael, you know how
Hmm.
that is too. Um, Dana was also working
Full
full time,
time.
and
He had
I was doing 24/48s
yeah.
and swapping so I could go to school. So I don't even remember
We had
what the
3
swap
kids at
was.
the time too.
Yeah,
So and the
Oh,
youngest was
mercy.
6 months when I went back to work.
yeah.
Yeah,
Danny was six
Danny was
months.
6 months when I went back to work, and so he would get off of shift on a 24, and I worked 45 minutes away. So I would load the kids in the car at 5:45 because I had to be at school by 7:15. So I'd load the kids in the car at 5:45, drive 45 minutes, park in the parking lot. He would meet me in the parking lot. We'd swap cars.
Yeah.
He'd drive back with the kids after working a 24-hour shift. Praise the Lord that he didn't have a car accident at all in any of those times.
Hmm.
And then I would work. I'd have his car, and then I'd get off work, drive 45 minutes back home. We get like maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes with each other before you'd have to hop in the car and either go to class or a clinical.
Yeah.
So we were like strangers passing in the night.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
Michael, how long was your medic program? Did it go over the course of a year?
So it was an intensive, so it was 40 weeks straight.
Okay. And mine was 12 months. So I mean, all that to say, the length of the program was definitely a challenge.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
now Dana had the summer off,
And we had a
and
sitter who came to the house
that's
and
right. Yeah,
watched the kids while
yep,
he was on his 24-hour shift.
Hmm.
yeah. So we had that, and also because your parents weren't up here yet, I don't
No,
think.
they didn't live here
Now,
yet.
do you guys have family nearby?
Yes, but my mom lives about 5 minutes from us, and my sister currently is about 10 to 15 minutes. She was a little bit
Okay.
closer, but
What
yes.
did what do they think amidst all of these new changes for you guys?
I think they're happy for us, proud of us. It's definitely been some challenges. Sometimes when he's working a 24-hour shift, I have the evening by myself. I'll go visit one of them or
Mhm.
have one of them over, you know.
So it goes without saying that there's struggles in marriage already. You add in being a nurse, being a paramedic, and that adds a lot of additional stress that we go through in our own careers. Everything from loss at work, loss of life at work, to just the stresses of everything from the demands of the job itself and the things that are being asked of us at work, which are just that's part of it, to the demands at home. And when you're spent, and then just you know I'll kind of position this question to Michael is, when you have a loss at work, do you guys have a certain bit of communication to where it's like, I had a rough shift, and what's the response, and how do you guys mitigate those stressors that do happen?
So that's a very great question, and I think it's actually one of the things that has attracted us to each other is the fact that we both experience loss at work. Um, you know, Shiloh's job is perhaps one of the happiest jobs one can have,
But when it's bad,
but when
it's
it's
really
bad,
bad.
it's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And so each of us understands what the other one is going through when there is a loss of life at work. Um, I will say this: I really don't have to communicate to Shiloh. I walk in the door and she picks up
Hmm.
on it. Um,
I've learned to read him over the years. Like he said, I feel like it is something that's helpful to have us both in the medical field. We end up both talking about our day and kind of understanding. I might not understand all the, I'm not a cardiac nurse. I don't understand all the waveforms and things, but like, but I get the gist of most of what he's talking about, and he gets the gist of what I'm talking about, and that's helpful that we can communicate about
Hmm.
that. However, sometimes I wish we had other topics of conversation because we talk about work and experiences we have too often. I think that is an
Yeah,
issue.
that's probably got to hit a little bit of a burnout mode, I would say. It's like, okay, enough of the medical stuff. Let's
Yes.
talk about
Like, can
life.
we please stop talking about medical?
Yeah.
But back to what you were asking about like, experiencing, hard things, when he comes home from work and it's been a particularly rough shift, you lose somebody, or it's a particularly, a young person, or whatever the situation may be, just being there for
Mm.
each other, being that person to, um, you know, have someone there to hold you, to uh, listen, let you just kind of, I don't know if this is a good way to say it, but verbally just vomit it out what you want to say and just get out all your
Yeah,
frustrations, or
absolutely.
even just not say anything and be there, just be there for that person while they just process it or are silent, whatever the case may be.
there was one night, I don't even remember why it was such a particularly hard night at the ER, but I came home, um, and she picked up on the fact that I had had a rough shift, and I'm lacing up my running shoes, and I basically told her, I said, let me run, and then when I get back, then we
Hmm.
can talk. But I had to be able to wear myself out physically to the point where um, something else other than my heart was
Yeah,
hurting.
and that's a healthy response. That's a healthy reaction.
Mhm.
If more and more people did that, how much better would the mental health aspect of what we do be, Um,
Absolutely.
and that's not easy to do because a lot of times that's the last thing that we want. We may want to go in and just plop down on the couch and turn the TV on, or want to just go to bed and sleep, for who knows how long. Or we may
Or hit the
exactly we
booze.
may want to to open up the liquor cabinet or go to whatever place is open that's serving alcohol at that time. But what we want, what we need, uh, don't typically line up after something like that. So that's a
Yeah.
great response, to to that, and it's not easy, and it takes discipline to do that. And that's where we try to do these things to instill and establish discipline with, okay, we know that we are going to have a tough shift. I'm going to have a flight that just is a zinger. You're going to have a call that just really doesn't go well. Charlotte, you're going to have a patient, that ends up losing, their baby. Um, we all have those losses as far as the medical side of it, and that's something where it's for those of us that are in the medical field. There's a little bit of an easier, I guess, ability to relate, but at the same time, it can be difficult, as you've said. And then when you're married to somebody that isn't in the medical field, like Dayna and I, we have our own challenges to where she doesn't. Obviously, she understands the loss of life. That's a no brainer. When somebody dies,
Yeah.
that's difficult. There's other aspects where she doesn't quite understand all the medical stuff that I do and things that I can get into, but she understands that it's like if I've had a rough shift or a rough day, rough flight, it's it'll rattle me, and she picks up on that. If I
Yeah.
if I come in the house and I don't say a whole lot, she knows. It's I doesn't take her long to read me. So
Nope.
Yeah.
Also learn to be intentional about it. You just maybe he's just has a weird face because he read something funky on Facebook, But like sometimes you just ask them like, "Are you okay? How are you doing?" Like ask, being intentional to ask. And sometimes it's like, "Oh no, I'm fine, everything's fine, whatever." And other times it's like, "No, actually, let's talk." You know.
And for the spouse, if I can jump in here, um, the spouse that is not necessarily in uh, healthcare, who's helping their healthcare provider cope with what they're experiencing at work. Um, that question, "How are you?" can actually be rather irritating to the person who is struggling, um, because then if they're trying to shut it out, if
mm,
they're trying to cope in whatever way that they're coping, and they're being asked, "How are you?" then it's forcing them to deal with it. So there may not be a positive reaction to that question, but it's a question that needs to be asked
yeah,
nonetheless.
We've definitely experienced that recently,
yeah,
with Anthony and his dad. His dad's been on hospice for a year now.
almost a year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost a year now. And he's really
Mm,
taken a turn to where we're just at the point of waiting for the phone call, basically. And so every time we
yeah.
go over there, it's like, I try to read them while we're there. And I'm a school teacher. I teach fifth grade math and science. I'm a facts person. I want the details. I want the facts. I want to know what I'm looking at. I want the data to support what's happening. And he knows that.
Yep.
He knows that information because he's in the medical profession. He understands, he sees death a lot more than I do. Um,
Yeah.
and so when I ask him, what are we looking at? How are we doing here? He doesn't really want to talk, or, doesn't really say anything sometimes. And we kind of, hit a wall at some point because he just doesn't, he's like, I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know what to say. And I'm like, well, just say it, even if it doesn't make sense. It's, help me at least try to understand something.
Yeah, and that's and we're
Yeah.
working through that process, as especially with
Mhm.
and guys and girls process things differently. I'll just put that out there. Guys
Absolutely.
process things differently than girls do, at least as far as how quickly. Now, there may be some guys that process it super quick, and that's them, but that's not the majority. Looking at the bell curve, the majority of men process certain things in their life a lot slower than women do. And I think that has to do with just the way you ladies are wired as far as communication is concerned, because you talk about things.
We think about 5 million things at one time. My brain doesn't shut off. I ask you what you're thinking, and you're like, nothing. I'm like, what does that feel like?
It's literally
There's
nothing.
literally nothing there at the moment. I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
Yep.
What does that feel like? I go to bed and my mind's thinking about, okay, I got to do this, and this tomorrow. I've got to work on this. I need to figure this situation out.
And there's times where I have tumbleweeds going through my brain, and it's because that's how I want it. I don't want
I'm in my nothing box.
I don't want to think about anything right now, and that's my brain rest. So, well, transitioning amidst the couple struggles and just it's obviously it's being married to a paramedic, being married to a nurse, has its challenges, has its own set of difficulties and circumstances, and being married to a school teacher as well. And there's
data.
Yeah, data. Well, and there's a lot of things on her end that's like I don't understand.
Tried explaining,
and it's like, why are they doing this? And yeah, whatever. Just but kind of transitioning. So with that relational foundation, the relationship foundation you guys have. So let's talk about a recent event. So for those of you listening that are familiar, Southeast Tennessee, Northwest Georgia, and I think part of Alabama was struck with a pretty large and severe tornado Easter night of this year, and
1,500 yards.
1,500 yards across. I mean, it's huge.
That was the largest one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so Michael, tell us where you were leading up to the tornado, and Shiloh, tell us where you were.
Okay. So I was working one of my 24-hour shifts, and Shiloh does not. I've got a weather radio at the house, but it is connected to my ham radio / my fire department radio. Um, I'm a volunteer firefighter as well, and Shiloh is not crazy about the radio being on all the time because it doesn't just scan the weather channels. It also scans the ham radio repeater. It also scans the fire department frequency, etc. And so she doesn't like all of that background noise. So Easter Sunday night, I was in my station just monitoring the weather on my phone because
let me interrupt you. How close is your station to where you live?
Station is probably about a 30-minute drive.
Okay.
Normally, my driving, it's closer to 20 minutes.
But your actual residential location is also within the county of which you work.
Correct. Yes. So I'm watching the phone because I know that she doesn't have the radio on at home. And if we get a warning, I want to be able to call her, wake her up, and tell her to seek shelter.
I actually asked him to look because I was like, I'm going to sleep. If I get to sleep, I may not hear a notification. Sometimes notifications don't come through.
So I am sitting in the bay of my station next to my truck. Actually, I'm in the cab of my truck, and just watching the phone to wake her up if I get an alert.
So I'm at home. I had brought the dogs in from outside because they're outside dogs, just because it was a bad storm. I had them in the sunroom, which is an all glass room actually. And I went to bed. You never think a tornado is going to happen to you. You always hear about them um, coming nearby or wherever, but never, not ever going to be you, right?
I grew up in South Alabama, and we never deal. I mean, we deal with tornadoes all the time, but it's never me.
Like I called him before I went to bed, asked him to keep an eye on the weather for me, and went to bed. Was sleeping quite well. I'm pretty sure though that God woke me up because I don't remember hearing any alert on my phone. I don't remember anything. Like I woke up, the phone said 11:20 p.m. and I could hear the storm raging outside. I'm sure I could hear the tornado coming. It's not quite registered in my mind. All I could remember is that it was so like loud and it sounded so bad. I was like, it is really bad out there. I need to like go downstairs. So I grabbed my phone and my pillow and ran downstairs. And by the time I ran downstairs, I literally could hear the tornado coming, and I realized it was so bad that I didn't even have time to dash across the living room and open the door and let the dogs in the main house. So I went and dashed into the closet on the main floor that is under the stairs. That was my safe place. Clambered in there with all the boxes of Christmas ornaments and immediately called my husband. And I was all choked up and in tears at that point because I realized what was happening. That the tornado was like coming, and I could hear it at that time, like coming overhead. And I called him and I was all choked up and I was like, honey, the tornado's coming, like it's here, it's like over, I can hear it. And he was like, what? I haven't got any notifications. And I had gotten one when I first woke up, like 2 minutes before I woke up. So but I didn't remember hearing it. So one came through on my phone, but he hadn't got anything. And I said, I can hear it. It's coming. Like it sounds like it's over the house. And I was all freaked out, and he could hear the terror in my voice. And then all of a sudden, like the connection was just lost. Like the tornado knocked out all signal, and I was freaking out because I was like, he just thinks I just got swept away. I was half worried, probably more about that, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and right at that moment, so Michael, you're looking at the CAD, right? You're looking at
I am.
know what's going on, and you're looking at the CAD. Tell me what's showing on the CAD. And for those of you that don't know, the CAD, that's where you get your calls and dispatch information, stuff like that.
Right.
So what's going on there?
So inside the cab of our ambulance, we have a laptop computer that shows all of the calls that are currently being run by units, as well as any calls that are coming into the 911 center that have not been dispatched yet. And as I'm sitting in the cab of my truck, I am looking at this laptop computer screen, and there's nothing on the board. There are no units currently running calls. There are no calls coming into the 911 center at the moment. And then right after my signal cuts out with Shiloh, I watch as hundreds of collapse calls just cascade down the screen of this CAD in the cab of my truck. And the thought that immediately goes through my head is, I've just lost my wife.
And at this point, so you got disconnected. You saw that come up, and then you attempted to call her back?
I did. I called 5 times before I finally got her back on the line. Just immediately, as soon as I couldn't get a hold of her, I hung up and called again. And you ask my partner, and I am running around the station, like a chicken with my head cut off trying to get a hold of her. And as a paramedic, I am a fairly calm and collected individual under stress. Um, you know, our job, as you know, Tony, is to make organization out
Yeah,
of
bring
chaos.
the calm to the
Um,
chaos. Yeah,
absolutely, and but it's different when it's a loved
yeah.
one. Um, it's different when it's your other half, and all composition went out the window.
And at this point, you guys are being dispatched on calls. So it's not
That's
just you
correct.
trying to reach
So,
her.
um,
Now you're being pulled in the direction of of the uniform that you're wearing. But your mind
yes.
is definitely not on that at that present time.
So my dispatch phone was actually ringing at the same time that I finally got a hold of her, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I essentially said something along the lines of, "I just need to know you're safe. We're getting dispatched to this mess. I've got to go."
And I was like, I'm safe, I'm okay. Uh, at that point, I didn't realize that a tree had come in through our
Oh wow.
bedroom that I had just been in 2 minutes before. Because downstairs, looked intact. The dogs were safe. I didn't know that at that point either. I was still in the closet. Um, but yeah, I was just so glad to hear his voice afterwards and to let him know that I was safe was also reassuring to me because I knew he, as worried as he would still be about me, he wouldn't be like so worried that I was like swept off the face of the earth.
Right.
Now, Michael, as you're going on this on your first run, how long did you
Yeah.
work after you and Shiloh exchanged that phone call?
So that phone call came in shortly before
Okay.
midnight. Um, and then uh, from there, um, I worked up until when my shift would have ended at 7 o'clock, and then was finally relieved shortly after 8 in the morning.
Yeah, I was worried about him because I was like, he's going to be on a 24-hour shift. It's going to be really busy. He's not going to get any sleep tonight. Like, he's also, I mean, with all the damage that is probably in many other neighborhoods, like, I didn't know how long it would take for his relief to come and relieve him. I mean, they could be dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with. Um, I actually had a friend of mine who's a labor and delivery nurse as well, and she was keeping me updated on the weather the rest of the night. But she was at the hospital. The electricity had
Yeah.
gone out. They had backup generators, thankfully. But when we made plans for her to pick me up in the morning, I was going to hike out to the end of our road, and she would pick me up and take me somewhere with electricity and that was dry. And I said, please, he's stationed right near the hospital. Could you take him a cup of coffee? I know it's just hospital coffee, but take him something for me. He was really appreciative of that because, it had been a long night and we're just something you do for each other just to try to help in hard times when you can't do something for someone else. To rely on someone else to be able to help them
Yeah, and
is important
that was
too.
another thing. I mean, it affected the hospital that you work at. The hospital, just for people listening, the L&D unit where you're at is the smaller of the hospital for the health system. But the majority of the initial patients seen came to that emergency department because a lot of the damage was
Yep.
right there. It was, I mean, it was right.
Literally 2 streets
Yeah.
over.
So I know of a good nurse practitioner friend who walked to the hospital. He wasn't supposed to work that night, and Juan walked to the hospital to help out in the ER. Just
We love
with
Juan.
Juan's awesome. Shout out to Juan. But yeah, so for not being a level 1 trauma center, they were having to act and triage and do things that you'll see. Yeah, exactly. So you have this barrage of patients, and did you guys have to transfer any patients from that facility to the level one?
Yes, my friend said that she heard that some people came in through the ER that, came in by personal vehicle and ended up being transferred by ambulance to the level one trauma center. And one of them was one of the casualties from the
Yeah.
tornado.
Yeah, there were. What was the? I think the total was it 7 from Tennessee?
3 or 4,
Yeah.
or was it more than that? At last, I know of 3 or
Yeah,
4,
and
but
yeah, it was a
pretty good for how damaged
yeah,
it was or
and
is.
for the for the location, that this is not an area where tornadoes are seen a
Mm-mm.
lot. I mean, tornadoes, you think of Oklahoma, Texas, and even other places west of where we live in Tennessee, but not the the Chattanooga area, not the southeastern part of the state typically. Um,
9 years
exactly.
ago was the
Yeah,
last one.
2011, April 27th, I believe.
That
And
hit us where
that
we're at.
yeah, we live up north about 45 minutes north of you guys, and it traveled across the top of the mountain. It's like tornadoes don't do that. And
Yep.
guess what? They do now.
Yes, they do.
It's like
They do.
hold my tree damage. Watch this.
Yeah.
So
You can see the level of the tornado in the tree damage, like even our neighborhood.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. I've had the privilege of seeing it from the air. Just the amount of damage. It's just when we flew over, it was a couple shifts after it happened. Just all the blue and the red tarps and all the trees. Just I mean, it looked like somebody just came down with a bowling ball and cut a huge swath all the way through that part of that area. It's just incredible.
You
You
mentioned damage that you had a tree come through your bedroom. Was there any other damage that you had to your house?
I think that was the main one.
Lots of water damage.
God blessed, really, because the order in which the trees fell on the house was really important. The biggest tree landed and hit the house. That's the one that came through the roof in my bedroom. The other 5 trees fell kind of crisscross on top of that one, and that other one blocked them from more damage to the house. However, with rain coming down through the ceiling, down through the flooring, my dining room light fixture looked like a water faucet, and it was just pouring rain that night. I just had like buckets on the dining room table, just trying to keep it up off the floor. So, there's been a lot of damage. Thankfully, the insurance is taking good care of us, and all the flooring in the house is being replaced. And
The house is currently gutted.
yeah,
Wow.
most of the ceilings are gone. The flooring is gone. Some of the inner walls where the tree hit are down to the studs, but they were reframing yesterday, and the new roof should be on today or tomorrow.
That's all.
So we're pretty excited about that.
Kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask her, did you have to move out for the renovation to take place? So I'm guessing
Yes.
that you did.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
We have a pod outside the front and a whole
A storage unit.
storage unit that we move stuff to, and friends, family, and church members have been super helpful in helping us move out.
And I know as far as response, there were both fire and EMS and rescue units that came from all over Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama to help in the effort, not just for search and rescue, but also for cleanup. The utility companies, and I mean, it's just everybody came together to and still is to get things back up and running. So
grateful for the linemen, for the people who come and pick up the rubble.
And we don't take we take electricity and water and sewer or septic. We take all that for granted. It's like we walk into the bathroom, the toilet flushes. We go to turn on a light switch and the power and there's illumination. And when you go through something like that, it's like all of those things that, it doesn't work. Oh no. It's like, oh, we can't live here for a little while because all of this is having to. So, I mean, that's definitely a new set of challenges for you guys. And how has that affected where you're at as a couple? And also just within, your jobs. Did you, um, did everybody allow you some time to take off? I would hope so anyway, to kind of start the process of putting things back together again.
I think it's been kind of a challenge because this tornado was on top of uh, COVID already. So I work part time at the hospital currently, and that's two 12-hour shifts a week. And so the hospital has been they cut PRN and then part time people next. And so there have been several shifts where I've been called off. And then I'm using up my PTO, which I had a good amount, so I wasn't super worried about it. But if you keep using it, eventually it's
Yeah,
gone.
because it's not
Um,
accruing.
Correct. And they're not letting us accrue any either.
Yes.
So I had several shifts called off, and they did ask me, they were like, do you want a few shifts off so that you can like deal with life? And I was like, well, I am dealing with life, but at the same time, like, I actually need money to deal with
Yeah.
life too. Like, I actually have to get a paycheck. So, I have worked other floors and other units just to get shifts. So then have a tornado thrown into it, and we're all working. I'm working different places. We're trying to move our stuff. We've got a broken house. We've got two dogs that are, nervous and need to stay at the house. And then there's construction happening.
A lot of
And,
moving parts.
there's all this different stuff happening and dealing with insurance. And so, to say the least, it has been extra stressful. Yes, it's probably bonded us together. We've gone through things together that, you know, do bond you, but at the same time there's that extra stress of like, you know we have to, what are we going to do with this, and what are we going to do
Hmm.
with that, and you know do you like this carpet, or I mean, that's the fun part, is like choosing fun stuff for
That's
the
like right
house.
down
At the
Dana's
same time,
alley.
like,
What kind of
I like
color?
this
And
and you like that, and and trying to like be okay, I'll give that one to you and you give this one to me, like, and we're having to compromise and make those decisions. But it does add extra stress because there's so much pressing in on us that sometimes you feel like you just want to explode. Or, I was telling someone the other day, I was like, everyone's talking about being at home or working from home, and or just having time off and all this free time that they've had, and they're just ready to get out and do stuff. I'm like, I've been out and doing stuff. I'm kind of tired of being an essential worker, a hero. Like, I'm over it. Can I have some of this quarantine time that everyone's been talking
yeah,
about? Like, I could use the break.
yeah,
And I probably could have gotten some time off from work, but at the same time, going to work sort of provided some
Yes.
normalcy.
Hmm.
Um, and at the same time, you know, we when you and I go into this field, we do it knowing that there are going to be times where, as much as it sucks, as much as it absolutely sucks, we're going to have to place some things with family on hold, because this is the life that we've chosen.
yeah.
And I don't think you didn't tend to think about, I know for me, I think that about how Anthony's more in the danger zone, if you will,
Hmm.
as far as his career. It's more danger. You don't think that
Yes.
your family at home has the potential to be in the danger zone until like this
Absolutely.
hits
Oh,
you.
yeah.
I don't think either of us even considered that a possibility until we saw what happened down in Chattanooga. Because we always planned
Yeah.
for well, okay, if you get hurt on the job or if there's, something happens, like we
Yes.
plan for that, but we don't really.
There's a reason my life insurance policy is a whole lot larger than
Yeah.
hers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that,
Definitely.
we didn't think about, okay, well, maybe we need to sit down and think about this and think about, well, what happens if something happens to me and the kids while he's on shift? So
Yep.
it
Yeah,
definitely changes
totally.
your perspective.
And for Michael, for you and I, out on the truck and on the helicopter, it's in order for us to do our job, it's especially with an event like that. I'm sure her safety and well being was definitely in your mind, but you had to compartmentalize, if you will, to take care of
Yeah.
what you had to take care of, and that's in that situation. It's not just like, hey guys, I got to go home. I can't think straight, because it was all hands on deck. It was everybody.
Absolutely.
Everybody was being affected, and everybody needed to do what they needed to do to help out. So I mean, that's not a fun place to be in.
No, it's not. And I was able to compartmentalize for the most part until my jerk of a patient asked me if I was married and how my wife was doing.
She wasn't a jerk or anything. She was being rescued by this lovely paramedic.
Yeah.
So yeah, she asks me, are you married? Uh, As we're making small talk during transport to the hospital, and I said, yeah, yes, I'm married, and she asked how my wife was doing in all of this, and I broke down at that
I'd
moment,
say
and I
it probably
said,
took people by surprise.
right now, yeah, I said right now, all I know is she's alive.
And that's, yeah, because that all of a sudden you had pushed home back. You had pushed
Yep,
your priority back, so you could do your duty. You could do what you were there to
yep,
do, and now all of a sudden it's being brought forward against your will. And it's like, wait, I'm not supposed to be
yes,
thinking about this right now, because that's not what I need to think about. And I totally
yep.
understand that. I totally get that. And that is a tremendous challenge. Um, Dana, you were taking some notes, and let's. Oh, you gonna talk about that later? Oh, okay. You're just writing down.
I'm getting ideas for blog posts here in my head,
Yeah.
and he's reading my notes, going, "Oh, you want to talk about this,
Yeah,
this, and this?" No,
I'm saving this
So,
for
I'm gonna
me.
write
so
about
be
this.
on the lookout for the next Confessions of a Medic's Wife blog post.
I like I said when
Good.
I hijacked his podcast the other day because he had said, I have no idea what to do, where to go with the podcast. I said, give me the microphone, I'll take it for you for a second. He's like, are you
Good,
sure?
good.
I'm a better writer than I am a speaker sometimes.
I'm glad we're both glad that you guys are safe.
For sure.
And you're
Thank you.
you're rebuilding, not just the structure of the home, but your home, because this tears into. We all have plans. We all have hopes and dreams of things, and I know you guys have your own things that you're working on, with everything from your the family that you hope to have someday soon, to just enjoying life together. And
Yeah.
this, the interruptions, the tornadoes of our life, and literally for you guys, it was that. Um, it can really it can set you back mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and even physically, to that aspect. And thankfully, physically you guys are well, but definitely mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, it can definitely take your breath away, and not necessarily in a good way, almost like someone getting punched in the gut. What are some of the things you guys are doing as a couple, and individually, to make sure that in those three categories, and those four for that matter, are staying in balance?
Good question. And actually, someone was talking to me the other day, and I mentioned that probably the hardest part of this has been the fact that um, I've worked very hard to build a sense of security for my wife and myself. That I've worked very hard to make sure that we're financially stable, that we have a nice home to live in. Um, and that home is secure. And the one thing that this tornado has done is it sort of shattered that sense of security that we had built for ourselves. Um, and it almost felt as if we had been intruded upon. Um, so as we've dealt with this, I think that the biggest thing that we've done is being intentional in communication, communicating what we're feeling, um, what we need from the other person, um, and asking the other person what they need from us. Um, but then also, um, not just the communication, but just spending time together. Our schedules don't always match up to the point where we're working the same days as each other. And as I told Shiloh the other day when she was asking about spending some time with her family, I said, "Yeah, let's spend time with your family, but at the same time, we've worked opposite shifts for a few days, and we need to come back together and just spend some time, just the two of us to reconnect. What Even if it's not sitting down and talking about something, just being together and spending time together and reconnecting."
Yeah, that's vitally important.
And also him like realizing the uh yes, he kind of went through the tornado with me, but he wasn't there. And so,
You were
you
in the
know,
same storm, but in different locations.
different
Hmm.
locations. And so I personally have had some kind of PTSD from it. So like
Mm.
if a bad thunderstorm with big wind is coming through at night, like I have a really hard time sleeping because of all of that. And for him to like be understanding to me to realize that, and oh, it's not just something silly that, oh, it's just a normal storm, you're going to be fine. Like he doesn't blow me off, but he's there to like, hold me or just be like, it's okay, or just to be understanding in all of that. And I think that that really helps me to be like, okay, it's not that bad. It's okay. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Because we both come from different areas and sides. And for me to understand where he's come from and him to understand my side and having that time to talk and
yeah,
just,
because I mean, in that moment here, he's the rescuer for people that are in need,
mhm,
and you're in the position of needing to be rescued. And when it came to a tree coming through your house, trees coming through your house, and all the water, and even talking about that, you're I know well I know for Dana, her oasis and her castle, if you will, is her home. She likes to do things, and to have things a certain way for the home. And if something or someone comes in, changes something or messes something up, that's a big deal. And for you, at least it sounds like to me that
sounds like my
your
husband.
home. What's it sounds like what?
Yeah, no, it sounds like my
Oh, really?
husband. That's his
So,
castle.
but I think from
I mean, me too, but more so.
yeah. So, but that's, I mean, and that's just it. Like you were saying, that's your safe place. That's your place to
Yes.
come and unwind and get away from, the the wants and the yelling and the screaming and the noise of whether it's your career, the world, this COVID stuff. That was your safe place, and that was just annihilated to a point. And now you have strangers coming in and repairing, and it's like, okay, are they getting this right? Are they doing this work correctly? I'm sure, Michael, I'm sure you're on that as well. With are things being done properly?
Every day I'm off, I'm over
Yeah,
at the
and
house.
that's I know for me that's where I would be too. It's like just making sure, because here is something that we had that we worked hard for, we're working hard for, and all of a sudden now it's completely changed, and now we have to make sure it's like, okay, is this going to be done? Is this going to be as good or better, or is this going to take us a
Yep.
few steps back? So yeah, it's a challenge, but yeah, I mean, being intentional and the communication and increasing the, as the challenges, the depth of the circumstances go on, the communication needs to be even more so, and that is a vital part of getting through a very tough circumstance. And it doesn't have to be verbal, like you guys talked about. The nonverbal communication is just as important, but having the understanding that you both are open to not only each other with, okay, yeah, I need to give this person, and understanding those dynamics of, okay, he needs space today, or let's not talk about that right now, not to avoid it, but just because it's not the right time, is really important. And that's something that, even in 14 years of marriage, and I wasn't throwing that up to say, oh, we've got more marriage. No, 14 years of marriage, there's
We're
we're
still learning new things.
every single,
There's a lot of
it
water
is.
that goes under the
It's
bridge.
a
It
lifetime
is
process.
because, and there's things about that I'm learning about myself. I'm almost 38 years old. There's things that I'm learning about myself that I just never, you know, never even either realized or dealt with. That's like, I need to deal with that in order to improve not only my relationship with Dana, but with, with our kids, and with, my career. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts that if we don't get on the same page together and have that discipline of, okay, this is what we need to do in crisis, because, and that's something, for those that are listening, whether you're single or married, if you do not have a plan for when you are in crisis, because at some point or another you will be in crisis.
If
you
you're breathing, you're going to be in
if you're,
crisis.
yeah, if you have a pulse,
Yes.
you will have a crisis. And if you are not planning for a crisis, just like we have to have, car insurance and health insurance, because people get sick, people get into car accidents. But if you're not planning for that crisis, when that crisis hits, your world is going to be rocked much more than it would be if you had a plan. And it's not to say it won't be rocked, it will be. But if you have a plan in place, you can fall back on that plan or rise to that plan. And now you have some discipline in that, and that gives you freedom in that crisis. Um,
So,
Go ahead.
to springboard off of that, um, Tony, in yours and my careers, we have a system of redundancies in place. We train for crisis. We prepare for crisis. We have, um, you know, A, B, C, and
Yeah,
D
we
plans
have
for
algorithms
crisis.
for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, just like because we had trained triage repeatedly and over and over, the night of the tornado, the moment I got out of my truck on that very first call, the first thing I did was jump out and grab my triage bag, and start putting tags on people because that's what we had
Mm.
trained. Um, and the problem that I see somewhat in people of our profession is we train for this knowledge of coming crisis when it comes to our careers, but unfortunately, sometimes our personal lives don't get that same training for crisis.
Right.
Exactly.
Um,
Which is wild, you know? If we really
yes, it's
we
hard to
really think
understand.
about it, because the principles that we can apply to our life, or in our career, we can definitely apply to our life. Um, it's just wild.
Yeah,
Having like that financial backup behind you, or having that
Exactly.
spiritual based strength, a relationship with God that can help you through hard times, or having a building a support system around you of, whether it's your family or your friends or a church family that will be able to help you in times of crisis. Because I know I couldn't have done it by myself. And if other people hadn't jumped in and said, can I help you? Even if they ended up never helping, just them saying, can I help you? What can I do? And I'm like, I don't know yet. But they kept coming back, kept asking, and eventually I was like, okay, now I know what you can do. And it was really helpful in the time of need.
Yeah. Well, guys, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing, your story and the challenges that you face, and we look forward to hearing more of the the rebuilding, and I'm looking forward to seeing the completion house photos and stuff like that on Instagram, and so
Yeah.
excited to hear about all that. But thank you for what you both do, and we're grateful to have you in our community of people that are that are serving in the capacity that you are, and so we wish you the best, and obviously if you need anything, we're not far from you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share, and thank you for the inspiration that you and Dayna are both to those of us who work in this field, have married into the field. You are an inspiration. Thank you.
For more information, look up Motivated Medic on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or go to motivatedmedic.com.